Call this meeting to order and start with a roll call.
Thomas Dewhurst, member.
Dave DeBack, member.
Damaris Potter, member.
Tressa Greshak, member.
Sharon Deaver, chair.
David Benak, vice chair.
Rachel Yondel, member.
Rob Likas, member.
Steve Romanelli, member.
All right, I think we're only missing one people, although I don't have the list, one person, but I don't have the list in front of me. I don't know if you already had heard for excused or if I'm just supposed to excuse that they are not here today. Okay. And then let's make sure we are streaming on Facebook and YouTube. All right, so I heard yes for YouTube, and it looks like yes on Facebook as well. So moving on, we next is adopting the agenda. And if there's any changes to the agenda, which we do have one, because Gail is here, we didn't quite get that in there in time, but we were planning on having Gail speak to us today. So any other adjustments to the agenda? Okay, then I motion to adopt the agenda.
I will make that motion.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say aye. Okay, no one's opposed, so that passes. And next is approval of the minutes from 2 months ago because we didn't meet last month. Did everyone see that? Okay, and then if there's any adjustments, otherwise I would entertain a motion.
Chair, I just have one minor spelling correction.
Okay.
If we could remove my spelling from being Dutch
Yes.
to being Dewhurst,
Yes.
that would remove that capital W in the minutes. That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah. Let that be noted. Okay. And then otherwise, I would entertain a motion.
I will make that motion to approve with the change.
Seconded.
All right, discussion. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say aye. All right, that passes. And then next, we've got communications. So any announcements? Sorry, we're doing things a little bit different if you haven't noticed. Any announcements from anyone on the committee? All right. I don't think I have any either, so we can move on. Any public comments, and we can also get ready to check the phone line, but starting with email, I don't think we had any this month. So no new comments emailed, and then we'll check the phones for public comment, and then if anyone's in the audience wants to comment, you could at this time, and then we do that again at the end as well. Yep. Also, I'm not seeing eyes, so I don't know. Is there anyone on the phone for comments? Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move to the in-person comments. I see we have one person, at least.
Hello, everyone. My name is Iris Potter. I reside at 1204 Manor Street, and I'm here to speak just related to unfinished business G1 on the agenda. In phase 1 of the deer plan, it's related to the deer. In phase 1 of the deer plan, the city instituted or ramped up its education and carcass removal programs. We can only presume it has helped. The sustainability forum earlier in the year that I attended was a good educational tool. I've also seen and heard of more people using fences and native plants or deer resistant. It's all good. I do recommend more outreach about coexisting with urban deer, and we need to add the key factor of as we continue to pay for development, which often includes small or large urban wood areas, that the deer will hit neighborhoods instead and the roads for access. A prime example is the country club expansion. Deer are on the move, which likely accounts for some people saying they see more deer. I did have 2 requests earlier, but thanks to Mr. Gish, I got a surprise email, and so thank you. Now, due to it being 2024 and 2 years in now, unless I missed it, which is possible, we need a Phase 1 data-driven report for the 4 action areas of education program, deer carcass removal program, the modified fencing update, and the feeding enforcement. For example, how many deer removal calls or contacts have been received? I also have to say that I felt it was premature in the recent media coverage to bring up Kleinstack as a potential call site when we are only at Phase 1 and possibly 2. But thank you for mentioning rebounding post-call, high expense, social response, and safety. These are all extremely valid and important for the public to know. I look forward to hearing updates today. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience here for public comment? Or there's another time at the end as well, if not. All right, seeing none, we'll move on to new business. And we have a applicant for the last remaining open position currently on the ECC. So Justin, if you're here, if you could step up to the podium. We usually do an interview.
Hello, everyone. My name is Justin Sanders. Thank you for having me here tonight.
All right, and this is opening it up to questions for Justin, and I'll start with, do you live in the city limits of the city of Kalamazoo?
I do. I reside just down the street at 723 South Street.
So I see you're a grad student at Western in environment, geography, sustainability.
Yes, that is correct.
Can you tell us a little bit about what your research projects are looking like? What are you interested in?
I'm currently working on a project for my main research project that addresses how climate change affects the energy use related to Kalamazoo's water supply, and trying to use different climate projections based on RCP 4.5 and RCP 8.5 to create a model to, I guess, extrapolate out so that the city could do some budget planning, with the projected energy use related with those different climate scenarios.
How did you hear about the ECC and what made you interested?
Several people reached out to me, and I've always had an interest since I graduated back in 2015 with my undergrad. I did some work in sustainability as a contractor for Stryker with food waste and a recycling program. I understand one of the subcommittees is reusable food containers are related to that. So that was something that drew my interest, and I've lived here for close to 15 years now and just thought that this is a great way to get involved with my community in a positive way.
I have another one for you. So what do you think is the environmental issue in the Kalamazoo area that you're most interested in addressing as a member of this board?
Well, I heard about the deer plan. That sounds like an interesting topic, but currently there's been a lot of talk with the new stadium, a lot of the issues that go into that, things like runoff and, changing the landscape to accommodate that new construction. And I believe working, with Western and with the community in conjunction will bring, as much communication as possible. And as far as, the largest environmental issue that I see the city facing at this time, that seems to be the one poking its head out to me.
Have you looked into like our subcommittees, and did you have any specific interest within those that you were thinking about as well?
Yeah, the reusable food container is one that I have some experience in my past work with commercial kitchens at Stryker. They have quite large cafeterias, and one of my main goals, aside from the recycling program, was working with the culinary teams in there to reduce food waste and educate workers on, portion control. Not necessarily you can eat as much as you want, but not taking more than you need, and trying to reduce food waste and the plastics and styrofoam containers that go with that, and those large scale, cafeteria operations for manufacturing facilities. So I would say the main one that interested me was the reusable food container program.
Cool.
You also mentioned that you were intrigued by the Deer Committee. What interests you about that?
Just living here for as long as I have, and I worked landscaping for a long time while I was still in school. We would see fawns bedding down in people's backyard near Edgemore and, in all the neighborhoods, Winchell and all that. And, it can cause problems for not only the deer, but also for obviously citizens, cause car accidents and things of that nature. As I believe Iris brought up, with the increase in urbanization in the area, those are going to drive deer out of their natural habitats closer into the city. And I think what you are all doing already is a great plan of action. And I would enjoy being part of that, helping with, data collection. I have some background in statistics, and I think a data-driven approach to the problem is a great solution.
Justin, just one curiosity. When you graduate with your master's degree, do you have plans to stick around or uncertain?
I'm uncertain at the moment. It's really what the job market provides, but I've loved living in Kalamazoo, and a great friend of mine is the historical preservationist here, and I try and help out with neighborhood events and things like that he's helping with, gravestone cleanings, and it's brings me great joy to help with the community. So if I am able to stick around Kalamazoo in a sustainable or geographical capacity for work, I would love to.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions, I would entertain a motion to recommend Justin to the last spot on the ECC.
I recommend that we accept Justin Sanders to fill our last seat on the committee.
I second.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed? All right, so you have, joined. You're welcome. Next month we'll probably be able to get you in already. We have to have the official voting from the City Commission next. And then you would be starting next month. I will mention now that this is my last year, so just a few more months left and we will need a new chair. So throwing that out there for people to start thinking about it if you're interested. So welcome aboard.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then next, we were going to review some attendance bylaws. Justin, did you want to lead a discussion on that?
Yeah. So just speaking with you and the board and looking at the attendance. So it seems that there's kind of a standing protocol where you miss 6 meetings and then you're off, but that's not in the bylaws. So if the board wants or the committee wants to keep that, we could make a motion to change the bylaws to reflect 6 missed meetings, and then you're off the board. As it stands now, it's 3 meetings, and then it's up to the officers to decide what happens there. So just cleaning up kind of some of the bylaws and the housekeeping in that sense. So you all are welcome to discuss, or we can punt it till next week or next month. Just raising that issue now.
Just a question that I would have, Justin, is what are the other committees that are set up supporting the commission? What is their general tenure
I don't know.
in that case? All right, that's fair.
I'm focused on one right now, but I can look it up. We can look that up. But no, that is a decent question. I go out on a limb and I guess. I believe one of the historic commissions is 6 missed meetings as well. But yeah, I don't have the answer for that. But you all, your own board, you can do what you want.
Yeah, thank you for sending that to us, Justin. I don't see a problem with it the way that it's written. It creates a lot of flexibility for us, which I think is a good thing, rather than having a cut and dried, you miss 6, even if you were ill for 5 of those. Yeah, I don't know. I like it the way it is, but I'm here to hear discussion.
Is there such a thing as an excused absence? Okay.
Yeah, we don't have the distinction between that, so.
And what you were just saying is the way it's written here, it's 3, and then you're out, right?
No, it's 3, and then the way it says have the authority to. So nothing has to happen, but it can.
Yeah, so I can read it in full, just so if you don't have it in front of you. Each member is expected to attend scheduled ECC meetings. If a member misses more than 3 meetings per year, the ECC officers have the authority to change that individual's status to associate member, which would be a non-voting member, or recommend removal by action of members.
So would this be something that somebody would have to put on the agenda, like basically by calling out somebody that hasn't been here, and then we would discuss removing them? Is that, I don't know how it's worked in the past or if that's ever happened before.
Yeah, are there closed session rules for us?
We were keeping track on the agenda for just how many overall in the year, just to kind of keep it updated, but I believe Justin has those tallies now. Since we've been doing the more formalized agenda, we haven't had that on there. So yeah, I would say either the chair or Justin would be needing to make it clear to us once 3 has been hit, basically.
Yeah, once 3's hit, I just email the chair and vice chair, and then they'd know.
I think the main issue really, we could stay as it is. We really want to have a quorum in order to take care of business, and that does not seem to be an issue most of the time. We did miss September, and sometimes I wonder if that's just a failure of some of us to communicate, because I think we would have had enough had everyone replied at the right time. No? No. Okay. Well, again, quorum.
Yeah, part of the problem was having, I think, an even number of people. So now that we're a full board, it's going to hopefully would be easier. I don't know. We could have the same amount of absences, and it would have been quorum basically if we had one more person.
I think I would like to know what the other committees are doing, kind of what their standard is, because I don't really have a problem with the way it's written. I don't really have a problem with 6 missed meetings and you're out. That's definitely more clear cut. But I would feel more comfortable if I knew what the standard was across the board, or, at least get a couple to compare.
We can wait till next month then to discuss this more, it sounds like. I don't know if anyone wants to claim looking into all of those other boards, or if we can just continue next month and see where we're at. So, okay, moving on.
Out of curiosity, has this ever been an issue for this committee or any other one that anybody knows in the past?
Usually when people haven't known that they're going to have ongoing attendance things, they've just removed themselves. It's my experience over the last few years here. So.
Justin, do you know if each of the individual committees have their bylaws that are published up on the website?
Yeah, that's all public.
All right. Well, I'm happy to take that. I'll take a look at all those and at least just get a feel for what they look like.
Sounds good to me. Thank you.
Yeah.
Then we can move on to unfinished business. So G, and this is the urban deer and no mow May discussion.
Ooh, sorry, one sec.
Oh,
Do you want
sorry.
to put Gail in here?
Oh, I'm so
for
sorry.
new
Yeah.
business?
Sure. Sorry, we didn't say when we were going to have you. If you would like to start now.
Thanks, good to see all of you. It's been a while since, sounds really loud. Am I loud? No? Okay. Okay, Justin's pulling up PowerPoint for me. Today we're going to talk about birds. What a surprise, huh? We missed the title slide, but that's okay. So I want to talk about bird-safe building design and why I think it's time to have a mandatory ordinance in Kalamazoo. So I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about all the great things about birds and how they provide a lot of ecosystem services. We all know about that, how they consume pests and help with habitat regeneration. Next slide. But we do know that bird populations are in decline. They're actually not so much in decline as they are in absolute free fall and crisis. So we've lost 3 billion birds, so about a third of the birds in the world in the last 50 years. And so there's a lot of birds that are at risk of extinction. Next slide. 2022 State of the Birds came out, and just the take home from this, that there's a lot of birds that are in decline and are at threat of going extinct. And just as a point, there are a number of these birds in Kalamazoo. So we live with a lot of these species that are declining. Next slide. So there's a lot of reasons for bird declines. Habitat loss and degradation is certainly one of them, and a big one. Pollution, because a pesticide use kills all the insects, birds have nothing to eat. Climate change, certainly with all the severe storms, is a factor. Free roaming cats is another huge issue. But we're going to talk about windows today and window collisions because they are a surprisingly large proportion of bird deaths. So, next slide. So about 10 years ago, Smithsonian tried to estimate how many birds a year were killed because of window collisions. And they came up with a number of 600 million. But we know that glass use is a lot higher now than it was 10 years ago. And also studies have shown that carcass persistence study. So when you go out and monitor, what are your chances of actually finding a bird that's hit a window? And because there's a lot of reasons that those carcasses don't stay where they are for 24 hours. And that we probably only find 20% of the birds that actually hit windows. And so the current thought is that it's close to 1 billion birds that are lost annually in the U.S. from window collisions. Next slide. So these are mostly songbirds, mostly during migration. They migrate at night, and then they mostly end up colliding during the day. So they find themselves in an unfamiliar environment. They need to look for some food, some shelter. Next slide. And so why don't we see more of them? You know, as we said, we only find about 20% of them. So they can fall in places that we can't see, in inaccessible rooftops. They fall through grates. Some of them flutter off. People think, oh, the bird got away, it's fine. Most of those birds die from their injuries later. They land in dense vegetation that you can't sort through. Sometimes they're picked up by the grounds crew before you can get there as a monitor, or management picks them up because they don't want you to find them. Or most likely they're scavenged by all kinds of savvy animals that know where to look for an easy meal. And I've seen this with a mole dragging a junco down its hole within minutes. So they disappear pretty fast. Okay, so where are these birds being killed? A surprising number are being killed at residences. There's a lot more houses than there are larger storied buildings. So about 44% of those are killed at 1 to 3 story buildings. The rest, for the most part, are killed at medium, low-rise and medium buildings. Skyscrapers can kill a lot of birds at once, but they really account for less than 1% of the bird deaths because there's a lot fewer skyscrapers than there are other types of buildings. Next slide. So what is the problem? The problem is birds don't see glass. We don't see glass either. People walk into glass all the time. It doesn't usually kill us. Here's a very attractive problem. You've got two sides of a building that come together at right angles with glass on both sides. You can see through. You can see a plant inside. This is actually the Kalamazoo Community Foundation. It's their atrium. There's a lot of plants inside there, so it's very attractive. And this unfortunate Cooper's hawk thought it was just a passageway and not a solid object. Next case. We're primates. We have our eyes in front of our heads. We're supposed to be moving through space at the same distance that we're looking. Doesn't always happen. But birds have got their eyes on the side of their head. So their most acute vision is not always forward. They got that big beak in the way anyhow. Next slide. So to birds, reflections are real. As you can see from this set of windows, the trees, the clouds, the vegetation is very strongly reflected on the outside surface of this window. Next slide. So birds don't see glass as a barrier. This atrium has a lot of plants inside. It's in New York City. There's probably more plants in there than there are for blocks around. So the birds can see through the glass and be attracted to that. Next slide. It doesn't really matter which direction the building faces. What the most significant factor is what's reflected in those lower 3 floors of a building. Vegetation, trees, sky. As you can see from this picture, if you were a bird poking around in that shrubbery and you were startled, you might think you were flying towards that park that's across the street, but you fly into the window. Next slide. So glass corners, as we saw from that example from the Kalamazoo Community Foundation. Next slide. This is an example of a recessed kind of channeling effect with a set of windows that is set back further than the building or the vegetation on either side of it. This set of windows in downtown Kalamazoo is responsible for a lot of bird fatalities, including a peregrine falcon. Next slide. This is another situation that we see a lot. I'm in a stairwell looking out at this unfortunate hawk. Next slide. So this is the outside of that stairwell. Stairwells are always problematic. They're lit at night for safety. They have the glass for safety again, and to keep rain and snow from coming in. But again, that's a very dangerous situation for a bird. Do I fly through that thing that looks like a passageway, or do I fly to the right of it? Next slide. And then courtyards and atrium are problematic. This is obviously not from Kalamazoo, but a bird would fly in seeking shade, some water, some food, and then to get out, he has to helicopter straight up. And there's always windows, next slide, around it, courtyard, and that's the idea, so people can see out at this nice green space. Next slide. So there's a lot of things that are made out of glass or things that look like glass, railings, walkways, bus stops, and these are all problematic, as well as a building window. Next slide. Because birds, as they're flying through space, they do not expect to fly into something that is a solid object. Next slide. So this is another stairway example. This is from the parking structure at the Bronson Hospital. I get a lot of calls if somebody finds a bird that looks vaguely like a peregrine falcon. So I got a call one day that there was a falcon dead at the base of these stairs in the parking structure. It thankfully wasn't a falcon, but it was, again, another Cooper's hawk that had probably flown into the parking structure, chasing a bird, because that's what they do. When it was ready to leave, it, instead of flying out to the left where that clear span is, it mistook these windows as a passageway and flew into the windows. If there had been some kind of pattern or marking on those windows that would tell the bird that it's a solid object, it wouldn't have flown into them. So next slide. So birds have a very good sense of their own body size. They know, and this is your average songbird, as they're flying, you know, they're about 2 inches front to back and 2 to 4 inches wingspan. Obviously, hawks and pigeons are bigger and hummingbirds are smaller. But if we can create a pattern in or on a window that fits the 2x2 or 2x4 rule, that will signal to the bird that this is a solid object and not a passageway. Next slide. So we know this from testing that's been done by the American Bird Conservancy. That's what the ABC stands for. Next slide. So a bird volunteers to fly through this tunnel once. What it sees at the end is a solid, a plain glass window or a window with a pattern in it. And depending on the direction that the bird takes through the tunnel, we can put a score on that material that's being tested. The bird does not hit the glass. There's a netting that catches him. He volunteers once. He's free to go. Next slide. So I talk about a bird-friendly building. What is a bird-friendly building? So this building on the left has a lot of reflective surface. You see the clouds, the sky. It's hard to tell which trees are in the foreground and which trees are actually reflected on the building, especially when it keeps jumping around like that, Justin. And so the building on the right is obviously a bird-friendly building. There is nothing reflective on this building. You know, from a bird safety perspective, it looks good. Next slide. So here are two parallel examples. So the stadium on the right is in Newark, New Jersey. I don't remember what the team is. So this is all glass as well, but there's all these louvers between the glass and the outside. So these louvers were not put there to protect birds, but they were put there probably for solar control, glare, maybe to keep people from throwing things at the glass. But this is a very effective strategy to create a bird-friendly building. The building on the left is the Minnesota Vikings Stadium. This has 200,000 square feet of reflective glass. And despite requests and advocacy during the design phase and the build phase to create this with bird-safe features, it was not done, and this is a pretty dangerous building for birds. Next slide. You can create a glass building that's safe for birds. This museum has got ceramic frit embedded in the glass. And you can see is the vertical striping, and this is a bird-safe feature. Next slide. So what are the strategies? So 3 things to remember. If you don't remember anything else, this is important. So strategy number 1 is to reduce the exposure to glass. So to use like those louvers, screening, decorative grill work, something that physically keeps a bird from being able to fly headlong into glass. Incorporate signals in or on the glass, and that's like the ceramic frit or some kind of a pattern, or minimize the use of glass, like we saw from that lovely bunker. But bird-friendly design does not have to stand alone. It overlaps with a lot of other features that are desirable anyway, for solar, thermal control, energy efficiency. Next slide. So here are some buildings that were built to be bird-friendly. They used the LEED. It was a pilot credit at that time, but now it's an official credit. So if you're creating a building, you're following LEED standards, you want a LEED silver, LEED gold building, you can get credits towards the LEED certification from bird-friendly features. So these are just some examples. Tracy Aviary on the top left in Salt Lake City has got all this decorative grill work. And these other buildings have got ceramic frit embedded in the glass. It's a little hard to see from this distance, but next slide. These set of buildings use the strategy of reducing the exposure to glass, so they've all got louvers or shutters or some other feature that stands between the bird and the glass. And these were not put up necessarily to be bird safe. They were put up for glare, solar control, and lighting control. Next slide. Here's an example right here, downtown Kalamazoo. I know the name of this has changed. It's no longer the AMC, but there's a whole wall of glass behind these louvers. And those were not done for birds, but it's very effective. It's done for lighting control. Next slide. So here's some examples of some bird-friendly glass. If you move it fast enough, the birds can't hit it either. So a lot of frit in the glass. Glass block is pretty bird-friendly. Next slide. Another example right here in Kalamazoo at K College is the Arca Center. It doesn't have very many windows. Next slide. But they chose in their entranceway this glass with custom designed frit pattern in it. Next slide. So sometimes at a highway rest stop, you look like you're looking out at the parking lot. On the left-hand picture, you don't even notice that there's a pattern on the window. You get up close, you can see all these little dots. And again, that was done for lighting control, but it's effective for bird safety. Next slide. It's another example of some, advertising, I guess, or at this hotel is just their design. But you can have like designs like this that, reflect the business that's inside with their logo, and those can be bird friendly. Next slide. The old Food Dance Cafe, I don't know how many of you remember that. These were windows that were actually on the inside, but they're frosted glass pattern, fun pattern. If they were on the outside of a building, again, this would be bird friendly. Next slide. Another example, these windows are in the interior part of the airport, but again, if these were on the outside, this is another way you could create bird-friendly windows. Next slide. So here's another recent example. I don't know if you can see this well from where you are. I don't know where you guys are looking. Right in front of me. Okay, so do you notice the little dots in the windows of this building? Well, they're there. So anyway, you can get up close and look at it. So this is the new Justice Center right in downtown, and this was built with bird-safe glass. So you can see there's little dotted frit embedded in the glass, and you don't even notice it. You don't even see it at all. It's not a problem. Next slide. So this is another recent example from Kalamazoo, the Dunbar Hall, which was recently renovated on Western's campus. You can see in this case the pattern is horizontal lines. And again, this was done with ceramic frit and done purposefully to be bird safe, as was the Justice Center. Next slide. Another example in Kalamazoo is the Nature's Way Preschool on Oakland Drive. They chose to put bird-safe glass in these windows that overlook their deck and out into the woods. Next slide. So they chose a glass that has an ultraviolet pattern in it, and it's kind of this pickup stick pattern. And so that's been effective for them. Not all bird species can see into the ultraviolet range, but many of them do. Next slide. This is just another example of a feature that would be bird safe. You see a lot of these custom perforations and graphics around. I see them more and more. From the inside of the room, the building, you can see out, but this sits on the outside of the window, so it decreases the reflection and makes it completely bird safe. Looks like a solid object. Next slide. And another example on Rose Street here in Kalamazoo is the Helping Hands Wellness Center with a lot of graphics on the outside. Next slide. Another example that's been mitigated at Western is an elevated walkway, and you can see the dots on the windows of this walkway. Next slide. Okay, so bird-friendly communities, as we're trying to create here in Kalamazoo with the Urban Bird Treaty application to the Fish and Wildlife Service, one of the requirements of the Urban Bird Treaty is to address issues with glass collisions. And we're certainly doing a lot of that. We're doing monitoring, we're doing advocacy, we're trying to get ahead of construction projects that are in the works to advocate for bird-safe features. We're giving presentations to educate architects and anyone who is interested. But certainly upping the, what we do to create bird-safe Kalamazoo by creating an ordinance would be a great idea. Next slide. So there's a lot of communities that have currently have bird-friendly legislation and mandatory that require some kind of bird-safe features in new construction or major renovations. And this is a list of some of them. There's quite a few in California and in Illinois. There's a couple of states that have bird-safe design standards, and of course those are mostly for state-owned or state-occupied buildings. So next slide. So here's an example from a community that does not have a bird-safe ordinance, and this is Chicago, where last fall, about a year ago, 1,000 birds died in one night at McCormick Place, which was tragic and did not need to happen because McCormick Place had been known as a problem for birds for many years. But because of this, that building has now been mitigated at a very high cost. Next slide. So why do we need a mandatory ordinance in Kalamazoo? We know that birds are valuable, they provide benefits. We have over 330 species of birds that have been recorded in Kalamazoo County. We know that bird populations are in free fall, are really in decline, and that bird collisions with windows are a big contributor to that. Being in a building or room where birds are hitting windows is emotionally upsetting. One of the other problematic buildings in Kalamazoo is the College of Health and Human Services, and I got contacted by some people who work in that building and said they'll sit there and they just hear birds and see birds hitting their windows over and over. New buildings can be designed to be bird safe without significant additional cost. And of course, bird safe features go hand in hand with a lot of other desirable, energy efficient, or aesthetic standards that people want anyway. Next slide. So a couple of examples of, and we know that we've got a number of buildings that already exist that are problem buildings. This is one of them, and I advocated to the developers and builders of this building while it was still in the design phase a number of years ago, and to no avail. And so this building is right across from the Arcadia Festival site, so you see a lot of greenery that's reflected on this side of the building, as well as it's got a glass rounded corner. And so we're monitoring this building for window collisions, understanding that we don't find all the birds that ever collide with a window, but so far this fall, since the beginning of September, we have found 19 birds. This building also was responsible for killing one of the young peregrine falcons last spring. Next slide. And here's a good reason why we really need an ordinance. So this is the building for KRISA, Kalamazoo Regional Educational Service Agency that is under construction right now. Advocacy was done in the design phase with the architects and the management at KRESA, and it looked like everybody was interested and gung-ho. This building has a lot of glass. It's huge. A lot of features that will kill birds. If you wanted to design a building to kill birds, this would be a good start. But you see some corners with glass, where glass meets at a 90-degree angle. You see a lot of glass surfaces. And they opted not to use bird-safe glass or bird-safe features in this building. The cost of the glass for this building would have been 0.4% of the project cost. 0.4%. Next slide. So here's my proposal. We really can build buildings without significant increased cost. If you plan ahead, you certainly can't design a building and then decide to hand it off to your, junior intern and say, now make it bird safe. But if you think about it ahead of time, like any other feature that's required, like ADA features, it can just be part of the design. So my proposal would be all the glass for new construction must be bird friendly in the first 100 feet above grade, and we call that the bird activity zone. Major renovations of buildings that replace at least 25% of the glass or reflective surface need to have some kind of a bird-safe feature. And the glass or the materials that are used must have a material threat factor rating of equal or less than 30 as determined by the American Bird Conservancy, or equivalent. Anyway, next slide. So, you're limited only by your imagination. I'm happy to paint squiggly lines and fish on any building that people want me to do. I think my rates are quite reasonable. But, I think there needs to be a better way than chasing one construction project at a time, because we'll never get ahead of it. And voluntary compliance with bird safe features is just not going to work. Sometimes it works, as we saw in some of those buildings, and a lot of times it does not. Next slide. There's a lot of resources for people to look for more information through the American Bird Conservancy website. They have lists of resources, lists of the ordinances that other communities have enacted, list of the threat factors, material threat factors, a list of model ordinances, and all kinds of other examples of buildings. Next slide. So that's it. Any questions? So this is just kind of a conceptual thing. I wanted to bring it to you more for information. Justin can kind of fill us in maybe on what the status is. But, I would love questions, input, support. Anyway.
I think it's a great idea, but out of curiosity, what kind of objections do you anticipate other than the cost?
Cost. It's like, well, it'll slow down construction, it'll ruin development, it's going to cost too much. That's the big one. Oh, we don't want to see, it's going to bother people seeing out of a window with these dots on it. Most of the time people don't even notice, or they think it's put there for their own kind of, feature.
And out of curiosity, obviously the architects are somewhat aware of this. Do you know if any architectural schools are teaching this as an important concept?
I don't know that. It certainly is. There is more awareness now than there used to be. I see articles coming out in architectural magazines. It's now, like I said, an official LEED credit that people can apply towards their LEED certification. There's a lot of architectural firms that are, will specialize in this kind of thing. And so a lack of awareness, can't be an excuse any longer. But I don't know whether it's being taught. It should be. Sharon?
Are there any places that people can look that are building these buildings to get financial help for specific bird safe design? Like grants or anything like that?
I don't know.
Okay.
Probably.
Isn't that like how one of the ones at Western was
Oh, yes.
implemented?
Yeah, okay, that's, okay, a good example. So on Western's campus, I've been monitoring there for quite a few years, and some of the students that started a monitoring project, knowing that there were a couple of elevated walkways that were problematic. And one of the students who used to sit on this ECC committee a number of years ago wrote a grant and was funded to mitigate the first walkway, and she wrote a grant to get funded to mitigate the second walkway. So, and this was through the Western Sustainability Department.
It's a student sustainability grant through Western.
So I'm sure that there's other types of grants available, but those are two that were used specifically on campus. Yeah, Rob.
With the 2x2 and 4x4, that's kind of new information to me. Is that kind of like the evolution of the silhouette that sticker used to have, like a predatory bird silhouette or like an owl statue or something? Are those just not cutting it as much?
No, a bird will try to fly through any space that's bigger than your fist. So you can have a hawk silhouette in the middle of your window, and there's lots of space around that. It doesn't really deter birds at all. And if you put it on the inside, you're going to see the reflection of the trees and the sky on the outside. So, that's another problem. You'd have to have a whole lot of hawk silhouettes on a window in order for that to be effective. Then you really couldn't see outside.
Do you happen to know some of the 17 species in Kalamazoo that are part of that endangered?
I knew somebody was going to ask me that, and I did not bring that list with me. I do know, but I didn't bring it with me because I knew I didn't want to take up too much time and get into the details. But
That's okay.
I can look that up and send it to Sharon if you want.
Yeah, for sure.
I always know somebody's going to ask me that. I should have the list with me. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thanks for letting me take up your time.
Thank you so much.
And we'll go from there.
Thank you. Okay, we can have the probably subcommittees wildlife and natural resource protection that we're going to talk about in a second, maybe take on discussing that further potentially. But let's move to the unfinished business of urban deer and Nome. So I guess that's right now.
Yeah, so, we've been discussing kind of how we format these subcommittees, and it seemed that there was consensus amongst the board, or at least an inclination, that, anything related to deer and Nome would be kind of rolled into the natural features. We just want to get a vote on that to make sure that we're clear, and then going forward, we can reference this point. So we'll just get a motion, or, again, it was also discussed to break those out into separate subcommittees, but it seemed the consensus was to keep them into one subcommittee, appoint 2 new members to kind of work under that subcommittee on those separate topics. But it's up to you all to discuss.
I wasn't here in August, so I just want clarification. Last time I was part of this conversation, deer in particular were rolled into wildlife and natural resource protection. Was that a discussion that had shifted in August?
That's kind of what he's saying, along with the Nome, I believe.
Yeah, I don't know if it shifted, it was never really clear.
Yeah, we're trying to clarify.
I'm trying to get something.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I would say, how about if anyone from that committee wants to say anything, or if you agree or don't with how that would work?
Well, so there was the urban,
Yeah.
but then there was also like the native species and plant. Okay, so those are two separate things, right? Or that's what we're
discussing.
That's what I would
Yeah.
advocate for. I don't know if
To
you
keep
guys
them
would agree.
separate
Yeah,
instead
to
of
keep,
lumping it
to keep them
together.
separate. Yeah,
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I think that they could both cover a lot more. At like keeping them separate.
Yeah, I feel like I can see where they're intertwined, but they're separate topics enough
Right.
that I agree.
Okay, yeah, so I guess if we wanted to split it into two, there's 3 different topics, I suppose. So are we having those all 3 or 2 instead of 1? So urban deer, no mow may, and wildlife and natural resource protection. So,
And no mow has been used interchangeably with the native
yeah.
species planting.
Gotcha,
thing.
gotcha.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing, I guess, urban deer as 1, and then the no mow may / wildlife natural resource protection / native plants as another 1.
Like 3
2.
or 2. Okay.
Urban deer, and then all of the rest of that. What
I mean,
said
I guess I thought the deer was in wildlife and natural resource protection because it's wildlife and I have nothing else to do. But it doesn't have to be that way.
I mean, you can.
That's the way I understood it the last time I was in the conversation, but I do think I probably missed something.
Who here would be on the subcommittee if it were just about the deer population?
I think I was on that list.
And then
I'm sure I was.
wasn't it
Yeah, and I
you as well?
volunteered as well.
Okay.
I do. Yeah, we did, that's the way we've talked about it, is that the deer would be rolled under the wildlife and natural resources. It was my understanding that we talked about some, for lack of a better way to put it, landscaping and ecosystems as another category, as like a wholly new committee.
Yeah, I would want to make that a new committee
That makes sense.
that I could be a part of if anyone else wants to join. So,
Okay. Yeah, did we have anyone else that was interested in that one? Were you looking at that one?
I'm interested in it, but I think this is a topic that almost everyone on the board is
Yeah,
interested
yeah.
in, so
Yeah.
I would be happy to help, but let's see if we have some people who aren't on as many subcommittees who want to get in there.
I'm interested in being a part
Okay.
of the No Mow May Native Plant Landscaping Committee.
Awesome. Okay, so I think we are settled to make some motions. So I would entertain a motion to create these as 2 separate subcommittees, the deer / wildlife and natural resource protection that Tressa and David were interested in joining. And then also the landscape / ecosystem / native plants / no mow may, however you want to word that, as the other one with Damaris and Rachel for that one. Correct?
Correct.
Does anyone want to make that motion?
Is that the official name?
If someone wants to say the official name that is interested in naming it, then you can do that.
Native landscape and, what was it? What was the other one? Native species. I'm not sure. It had a name at one point.
Yeah, I think it did.
I don't have that written here except for the wildlife and natural resource protection, but that was now really kind of the deer one. So it's open. I don't know if the name matters that much, but that's the general topic. So we could just.
I'll make a motion to separate it into those 2 categories pending names.
We'll let the subcommittees figure out how do they want to name those topics.
That's fine.
Okay, I'll second that motion. So I guess if there's any more discussion, okay, then hearing none, if we all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes. Now, moving on to discussion on the waste subcommittee. So basically, we were going to recreate that as a subcommittee, and Steve Romali was going to be the liaison or representative for the subcommittee. So I would, we've talked about that a little bit, but I would entertain a motion for that. We're just trying to formalize this.
I'll set the motion for that, establishing that
All right.
formally.
I'll second that. Any discussion? Hearing none, then we can vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that has passed as well. Okay, and now we're moving on to reports. So I don't have the names next to it, but we'll see how I can do by memory. So Natural Feature Protection Review Board, Bobby is not here. So moving on, air and water quality, Bobby is also not here. So the next would be Wildlife and Natural Resource Protection / Urban Deer.
Well, we had a lovely conversation today earlier about urban deer. No, I have nothing to report.
Okay. And then Planning Commission.
Nothing to report for the Planning Commission either.
Okay, and the Tree Committee?
We did not meet the last 2 months, so nothing new to report.
Okay. Asylum Lake Policy and Management Council, which I am on, I will also need someone to take that over next year. It is a voting position on the Asylum Lake Policy and Management Council. And it's once a month at most. They usually take 1 or 2 off a year, just kind of preface that. This last meeting, we had a report about a water quality project that's been going on, and we had some people explain hundreds of tests that have been done to work on this, taking away more of the effects of road salt that's coming in off of the highway into Asylum Lake. So pretty interesting stuff, super technical. That was really cool. And then we also just briefly discussed an issue with deer, which has been going on from a bunch of deer dying, I guess, throughout the city and other places in the area from a disease in the water. I do not remember the name of it, but it wasn't something that passes from deer to deer. It's something that should go away with the winter, is from my understanding. So that was also interesting. And if you're seeing some deer, there's been different kinds of rumors, so that's just like, you can look into that, but that's a very common thing that's recently been happening. So those are the main things that we have gone over. We'll move on to Parks and Rec.
Nothing new.
Kalamazoo River Watershed Council.
Had their annual meeting this last month, so it's just pretty much a fun social event. Nothing too significant to add.
Okay, how about Odor Task Force?
No meeting.
And it looks like we have waste on the subcommittee if you were interested. I didn't specifically ask Chris for the numbers. I don't know if that's something you're planning to keep doing or how you want to go about this.
We came prepared.
Okay.
Oh, no, you're talking about it. You were in the meetings. Yeah, I think just give a brief overview of what meetings you've been in, what we talked about. I'll cover for Steve while we're doing that. So sustainability updates. Alexa, you want to come up and talk about the 2 events that we have coming up?
Sure. So this Saturday, October 19th, is the Home Energy Efficiency Summit. We'll be at the Northside Association for Community Development on Park Street. It's from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. We'll have a variety of speakers throughout, talking all things efficiency, and then we'll have tablers as well, so you can learn more about what you're interested in. There will be free food and $1,000 worth of prizes raffled off throughout, and an EV car show going on. So lots of good things. And it's free to attend, and you can swing by at whatever time works for you, stay the whole time, stay a little bit. We're just encouraging folks to come when they please. And then following that event in November on the 12th at 7 p.m., we're going to have a Solarize Kalamazoo event. So we're bringing in the Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association, Helios Solar, and ourselves to this conversation. And we're encouraging any community members that are interested in putting solar on their homes to come and learn more about this program. It's at Brewery Outre at 7 p.m. on the 12th of November. Yep.
Thank you.
Just one question for the, I'm not sure what's called for this Saturday, the
Home Energy Efficiency Summit.
Will Eagle be there to kind of discuss the rollout of credits for consumers for, let's say, energy improvements, heat pumps, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, Eagle will be there. The representative from Eagle is speaking from 2 to 3 p.m., so
right.
at the end.
Great, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
And the agenda and everything's online. Alexa's done a good job of putting the posters together. So you can find the agenda, you can pick and choose, a la carte, stay all day, or just pop in when you're interested.
And back to the waste piece, I cannot find my notes right now. I apologize.
Oh, no problem, Steve. I put you on the spot. No, so Steve's been in some leaf pickup meetings, some kind of broader meetings about the Kalamazoo River watershed, meeting with Doug McLaughlin there. But yeah, just going forward, working with Steve and the subcommittee, we'll kind of get a handle on some of the waste issues going on in the city. One of those is, I guess I'm drawing a distinction between waste and trash. Trash is, kind of what piles up on the side of the road. We're also going to be looking at that. A student group from Western Michigan University reached out. There's an RSO that all they want to do is pick up trash. So I don't know if the Squirrel Club's defunct. Folks don't have anything else to do, but they're going to work with us to pick up trash. But yeah, so going forward, we'll meet, seemingly we'll start monthly, the Wednesday before this meeting, and then Chris will funnel his numbers through Steve, and we'll talk about it that way. Yeah, I think that about sums it up. Anything else stand out to you, Steve? Yep.
Justin, do you know what that RSO is called? The trash picker-uppers?
No, I think it's something like that. But
okay. Interesting.
All right, then moving on, is there any final comments from members?
I just wanted to pass along, I had the privilege of taking a tour of the city of Grand Rapids. Well, actually, it's Kent County's MRF, Materials Recycling Facility, and I got quite an education going through. I got to see videos of lithium battery fires, which is becoming more prevalent as people are throwing them in the trash, and then as the trucks, compact, and then they're run over by giant loaders. They've had some pretty scary fires. They now have installed a lithium battery fire suppression system, which uses infrared so that they can detect hot spots, and then they have aimable nozzles, which is a water cannons with a it's almost like additional coating that goes over it to help smother the fire. The other things I found were really interesting is that there's a boatload of plastic bags, even though nobody accepts them. They have issues of belt, keep in mind that everything moves on belts. Guess what their biggest contaminant is for belts?
Plastic bags.
Lawnmower blades.
Oh, interesting.
And if they get one in there and it's not caught, it shreds a belt in like a matter of minutes. So, obviously education is really important. Given all that, they still recycle, lots of paper, fiber, glass, metal, all that kind of stuff. And that they have probably about 10 or a dozen full-time people that are just picking contaminants off the line. And then, stuff goes all over the Midwest for recycling. But very educational. If any of you get a chance to take a tour of any of the MRFs, it gives you pause, I think. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I was able to tour ours. Just wanted to clarify, we don't have our trash go to Grand Rapids. Ours goes down to the Indiana MRF. There's only a few differences probably for like things that are accepted and stuff, although that's kind of always changing. But yeah, they mentioned that the bags are clogging up that so much that they have to shut it down multiple times a day to remove the bags from that. That's been a problem for a long time. They are recycled in drop-off at places like Meyer, all of those bags, but those are not in single stream in either of those places.
They pointed that out as well in Grand Rapids, that there's like people, you could recycle these plastic bags at stores, but here they're just going to be landfilled. They just view it as a contaminant and it goes off.
Any other final comments?
I did, so Vice Mayor Hess did bring up to me a question she had about the EPS foam collection process. She was wondering, this might be a discussion for next month maybe, but what are the resources that the city would need in order to make like styrofoam recycling a monthly event put on by the city instead of bi-monthly or whatever it is now?
It's quarterly now, and that's definitely a discussion for the Waste Committee. That's been an ongoing discussion. A big thing is it's run by volunteers besides like a city worker pretty much. So that's definitely a bottleneck, but I think last I checked, they were looking into more frequent, but volunteers is going to be an issue for that. I don't know if other people have more updates, but that was definitely something that was discussed back when we were doing the pilot program and getting it going. And it's clearly been very successful, and I would think it would be great to have it that often, but they're planning a little at a time to figure out how to make it more efficient.
When did the pilot program start?
Sometime in the last 6 years. Okay. I don't remember right now when that was, but it was. Fine. We ended up doing a pilot for like a year and a half. We were planning for a year pilot, and then we pushed it out and did 2 more quarters until we finished the details basically with the city to take it over. So, yeah. Any other final comments before we check into comments on the phone and in the audience? All right, hearing none, we can look at those phone lines. All right, and then is anyone in the audience interested in a comment?
I'll just clarify your deer disease, epizootic hemorrhagic disease of deer. So it is a virus. It's spread by midges, which are biting flies. Causes a number of different symptoms in a deer. Doesn't always have to be fatal, but oftentimes it is. The deer end up near water because one of the symptoms that the disease causes is that their temperature goes up. So they're running a high fever. So they go to water in an attempt to get cool. And so that's oftentimes why they're found in or near the water. So anyway, it's not spread by water, but that's why they're in the water.
Thank you for the clarification. All right, if there's no other comments, then we can adjourn.